Faith does not arise from wishful thinking or positive emotions. It is born when the living word penetrates the heart. In the darkest hour, when the night feels heavy and hope seems far away, the heart is most desperate for something solid to hold on to. It is in that place of quiet desperation that the Word of God carries its greatest impact. A single verse, a single sentence breathed into the soul by the Spirit can ignite a flame that no darkness can smother. The circumstances may remain unchanged, the pain may still linger, but something shifts deep within when the word is truly heard. It is not just the sound of the words, but the life within them. The assurance that what God has said is already settled in heaven. The midnight hour often strips away all the noise, all the self-reliance, and leaves the soul open to receive without distraction. In that raw openness, the word lands like seed in fertile soil, and faith springs up not from human reasoning, but from divine revelation. When that word takes root, it becomes a light in the darkness. The surroundings may still look bleak, but the heart begins to see differently. Faith is not moved by what the eyes behold, but by the certainty of what the Spirit knows. And all it takes to awaken that certainty is hearing, truly hearing, the voice of God, even when everything around you whispers that it's over. There is something unique about the stillness of midnight, a hush that settles over the world, as if creation itself pauses to breathe. The traffic has stopped. The phone no longer rings, and the noise of the day has faded into quiet. In that rare atmosphere, the heart can finally hear without competing voices pulling it in every direction. It is often in these moments, when the mind is no longer occupied with the demands of life, that the whisper of God becomes unmistakable. During the day, his voice can be drowned out by the clamor of responsibilities, opinions, and urgent tasks. But at midnight, the world seems smaller, the air feels clearer, and the soul becomes more attentive. The absence of distraction makes even the faintest nudge in the spirit feel magnified. Words that might have gone unnoticed in the daylight suddenly pierce with meaning. A scripture that once felt familiar begins to glow with new revelation. A gentle prompting feels weightier, as though heaven itself leans closer to speak. It is not that God's voice grows louder at midnight, it is that our ears grow quieter. The soul, stripped of its daily defenses, stands open to receive. The darkness outside can make the light within shine brighter. And in that clarity, the heart can recognize what it might have missed before. In these quiet hours, a single word from Him can resound like a bell, carrying truth and direction that lingers long after the night has passed. There are times when the body is heavy, the mind is tired, and every part of you longs only for rest, yet the spirit must remain alert. Weariness can dull awareness if you allow it. But the voice of God often comes in moments when the flesh is at its weakest. It is in these moments that spiritual attentiveness becomes essential, because the things of God are not received through physical strength, but through a heart that is open and receptive. Tuning your spirit to hear means living in a state of readiness, cultivating an inner sensitivity that is not dependent on how awake or comfortable you feel. It is like keeping a lamp lit through the night, even if the body slumps in exhaustion. This tuning is developed through daily fellowship with Him, so that even in fatigue, the soul can catch the faintest whisper of His leading. The weariness of the body may tempt you to overlook those subtle impressions in your heart, but the spirit must take priority. Some of the most life-changing words can come when you are at the edge of sleep, when your mind is no longer racing and all that is left is quiet openness. In such moments, your willingness to lean in, to notice, and to respond can mean the difference between missing a divine appointment and receiving a word that shifts the course of your journey. When God speaks, it is rarely with the force and drama that human expectation imagines. More often, his voice is like a gentle breeze brushing across the heart, a quiet prompting that can be easily overlooked if the soul is not paying attention. It does not demand with noise, it invites with stillness. This is why so many miss it, looking for a spectacular sign, while the true guidance comes softly, almost imperceptibly, yet carrying the weight of eternity within it. A gentle nudge might be a sudden awareness to pray for someone, a verse that rises in your heart without warning, or a sense of peace leading you in a direction that defies human logic. There is nothing forceful about it, yet it leaves a deep impression that you cannot shake. This is the way of the Spirit. He does not compete with the clamor of the world. He speaks in a way that requires the listener to draw closer. It is in leaning in that we discover his nature. A thunderclap could overwhelm, but a whisper invites intimacy. A gentle nudge ensures that only those who truly seek him will hear, and in that seeking, the relationship grows, because hearing his voice is not about dramatic moments, but about a heart that has learned to recognize and treasure even the faintest sound of his leading. Midnight has a way of magnifying everything. The silence can make problems seem louder, and the darkness can make challenges feel closer. The enemy knows this, and he uses the stillness of the night to whisper fear into the heart, reminding you of failures, stirring up anxiety about tomorrow, and painting pictures of worst-case scenarios. In the quiet, those lies can sound convincing if left unchallenged. And what begins as a thought can grow into a heaviness that steals rest. But God also chooses the midnight hour for his own purposes. What the enemy intends for fear, God transforms into a moment of faith. While the world sleeps and the mind begins to settle, the Spirit can speak words that break through the shadows. A verse can rise from within. A memory of his faithfulness can surface, or a sudden assurance can fill the room, pushing out the darkness. In that sacred exchange, fear loses its grip and the heart is strengthened with a faith that is not shaken by the hour or the circumstance. Midnight becomes a place of choice, either to listen to the whispers of fear or to lean into the voice of the one who speaks life. When his word comes in that stillness, it carries a clarity that cannot be mistaken. And faith begins to rise where moments before there was only dread. What was meant to be a night of torment becomes a night of encounter, turning the darkest time into a testimony of light. When God speaks, his words are not empty or uncertain. They are living and active, infused with the very power needed to bring them to pass. Unlike human promises that rely on effort, resources, or circumstances to succeed, a divine word contains within it the seed of its own completion. It does not need external help to become reality. It carries the authority and creative force of the one who spoke it. From the very beginning, creation itself testifies to this truth. God said, "Let there be light," and light existed, not because of a process or negotiation, but because his word was enough. That same principle applies to every promise, every instruction, and every revelation he gives. The moment it leaves his mouth, it is already in motion toward fulfillment. It does not return to him void, nor does it fade with time. It continues to work until what was spoken becomes what is seen. This is why receiving a word from God is not merely hearing something inspiring. It is welcoming a force that can alter reality. The heart that believes and aligns with that word becomes the place where its power is released. The conditions around you might seem unchanged, but the word within you is alive, working in unseen ways, drawing events, people, and opportunities into alignment. And when the moment is right, what he spoke will stand as undeniable proof that his word carries everything it needs to come true. What God whispers to your heart in the quiet of midnight is not meant to stay locked away in silence. Those moments of revelation, encouragement, or direction are often given in private so that they can be carried with boldness into the open. The stillness of the night creates the space to hear clearly. But the purpose of that word is to shape how you live, speak, and stand when the day comes. In the darkness, it is easier to believe because there are fewer distractions and fewer voices competing for your attention. But when daylight breaks, life resumes with its noise, demands, and pressures. That is when the midnight word must become a public confession. Something you hold to and declare even when others cannot see what you have seen or hear what you have heard. Speaking it out in the daylight not only strengthens your own faith, but also allows the word to influence those around you. The enemy often tries to steal what was received in the night by flooding the day with doubt and contradiction. But a word spoken aloud becomes anchored in your spirit. It is a declaration that you are standing on what God has said, regardless of what circumstances suggest. Midnight may be the place of revelation, but daylight is the place of demonstration, where the private encounter turns into public testimony and the seed planted in the stillness begins to bear fruit in the open. When God speaks in the quiet hours of midnight, the timing is never random. His instructions, impressions, or revelations often come with a sense of urgency, not because he's bound by time, but because obedience in that moment positions you for what he is about to do. Delaying can cause the clarity of the word to fade, allowing doubt, reasoning, or distractions to weaken your resolve. What feels clear and undeniable in the night can be questioned in the light of day if not acted upon quickly. Immediate obedience shows trust. It says that you value his voice above your own comfort, above convenience, and above the tendency to wait for more confirmation. Many times, the step he asks you to take in the midnight hour will not make full sense to your natural mind, but the obedience itself becomes the key that unlocks the next stage of his plan. It is in that prompt response that doors open, protection is secured, and blessings are released that you could not have orchestrated yourself. Some instructions are time-sensitive because they are tied to specific moments in God's timing. A delayed response can mean missing an opportunity that will not come again in the same way. That is why midnight revelations carry a weight. You are not just hearing for comfort, but for alignment. The darkness may surround you, the world may be asleep, but the moment his word comes, your movement must follow, for obedience at midnight often sets the course for the breakthrough in the morning. Faith is not built on what the senses can confirm. It thrives on trusting what God has said, even when there is no visible proof. Acting on the unseen means stepping forward without the comfort of physical evidence, relying instead on the certainty of his word. The feelings of the moment may fluctuate. Fear, doubt, or uncertainty may press in, but faith chooses to move in alignment with truth rather than emotion. This choice is not always easy because the felt is immediate and tangible, while the unseen requires trust in something beyond the natural. Yet it is in this tension that faith strengthens. Every step taken without visible assurance becomes a declaration that God's reality holds greater authority than what circumstances suggest. Over time, these steps build a history of trust. Moments you can look back on and say, he was faithful then, and he will be faithful now. The unseen is not imaginary. It is simply beyond the reach of the physical senses. It exists in the realm where God's promises are already settled, waiting to be manifested. When you act on what is unseen, you are aligning yourself with that reality, drawing it into the present through obedience and trust. And as you continue to walk this way, faith deepens, not because you always feel strong, but because you have learned that his word remains true regardless of how you feel. It only takes a single word from God to redirect your path, break the weight of years of struggle, and open doors you never knew existed. His word carries the kind of authority that does not just inspire, it transforms. One sentence, one instruction, one promise spoken into your spirit can shift your thinking, alter your decisions, and set you on a completely different course. The change may begin in a moment, but its effects can ripple through every area of your life for years to come. When that word comes, it has the power to uproot lies you've believed, Replace fear with confidence and awaken dreams you thought were dead. It doesn't have to be long or elaborate. It may be as simple as go, stay, forgive, or trust me. Yet in its simplicity lies unmatched power, because what God speaks is infused with His authority and backed by His faithfulness. That one word becomes an anchor in storms, a compass in confusion, and a spark in seasons that feel cold and lifeless. The trajectory of a life changes not because circumstances suddenly shift, but because the heart that receives the word begins to live differently. Choices change, priorities align, and faith rises. And as you follow that word step by step, you begin to see how one divine moment of hearing can become the starting point of an entirely new chapter, one you could never have written on your own. So when the midnight hour comes, and it will, do not despise it and do not fear it. In that stillness, God can speak a word that cuts through the noise of doubt and the weight of despair. The enemy may try to fill the darkness with fear, but the voice of the Lord carries a light no shadow can overcome. Every word He speaks holds the power to bring itself to pass, and what you hear in the quiet must be carried with courage into the light of day. Midnight is not the end of your story. It is the threshold of a new beginning. One word, one whisper from Him can set you on a path you never imagined. If you will hear it, believe it, and obey without delay. The night is only temporary, but the word you receive in it can change the course of your life forever.